So I'm going to tell you a quick little story surrounding consumerism and producing. Okay? So America, right, this nation, did not have even the ability to sustain itself, right? They came and they starved in Jamestown. They couldn't survive. They didn't know what to grow. They didn't know how to grow. And North America was really difficult, right? In order to kind of produce a forward advancement. They couldn't survive. So the natives taught them how to survive, what to grow, how to build root cellars and preserve food and these kinds of things, right? So they were using British currency, okay, all the way up until the late 1700s. They were using British currency. Okay, they went and they trafficked Africans to this continent. Okay, and through those Africans, through our families, okay, they bred innocent black girls and made their wombs produce workers. Okay? Those workers then produced America's solvency. It allowed America to compete on global stages in areas of agriculture, in areas of tobacco, in the area of cotton goods and exports, and on a global scale, America was able to turn herself into a superpower. And this was 100% based on the production, right? What it was that they were able to produce using free labor, okay? So they produced their solvency. They produced an environment where they could compete globally, right? They produced workers that they didn't have to pay, right? They produced all of these things. Then on April 2nd, 1792, the first currency on the North American continent was minted. Okay? Prior to that, they were always using British money. They fought the Revolutionary War. They minted their own currency. Now, their currency was given value by way of a unit of work. Okay? A unit of work. And that unit of work came directly from the hands and the lives of our families. Okay? So they produced a currency. They produced a solvency that they could advertise to everyone in the world. Look what we did. We're the greatest country in the world. We've got all this opportunity. We've got all of this land and all of this that we invite all of you from all over the world to come and share in. Okay? So they produced their superpowerdom. They produced their economic reality. They produced their currency. And they produced their future based on what they stole. Okay? All right. Now, at this point in history, right, the trafficked people that were brought to America were never paid, right? They didn't pay them. They made them slaves, right? They made them slaves. They never paid them for the work. And that is what made it so very lucrative, right? That's why it was able to propel. It's different from China, right? China had to earn hers. She didn't import people to do it for her. She did it herself. Russia didn't import people to do it for them. They did it themselves. Every other nation in the world outside of the colonizer nation, they did it themselves. They're the ones that pulled themselves up by their bootstraps. They're the one that saw challenges and sacrificed in the name of overcoming those challenges. Now, not all of them did it right. You know, I'm not here to judge China or Russia or any of the other countries in the world. I'm not here to judge them and sanction how they did it, what they did to their own people and all of that. I'm not judging that. What I am saying is that these countries did it for themselves. Okay? America took the easy way. America stole human beings and forced them into the condition and made them produce the solvency that America would enjoy. Okay, so the Emancipation Proclamation happened. Okay? And once that occurred, and the reason it occurred, right, was A, to fight the Civil War, but B, the markets that had been produced through slavery and through the labor that they had attained for free fell out. They bottomed out. The cotton was being replaced with silks, right? Everyone else in the world began competing in these same areas that America had dominated using this free slave labor, okay? And so America was 100% invested in this endeavor. And when the market bottomed out and everybody else was competing, America was left with no answer, right? They didn't have a solution. They didn't have a means of reacting, okay? And so then the Civil War raged on. Abraham Lincoln tried to get loans from the banking cartels in New York. They offered him loans at a 40, 45, 46% interest rate. And again, it was unscalable. He couldn't win the war. So they produced the Emancipation Proclamation. Fine. Okay. At the point of Emancipation Proclamation, what happened was they freed the slaves. They freed the slaves. Okay. And the slave master's plantation was now falling into disrepair. Okay. They weren't making any money anymore. Right? And now you got hundreds of people that live on this plantation, right? But you're not generating any money. You're not able to pay your taxes. You're not able to pay for the things that you had previously paid for as a slave master. The only thing that they did have was this body of people that could produce food. So they weren't going to starve, right? They simply weren't making money from their crops as they had been. So how to generate revenue? And what happened was the state, before the Emancipation Proclamation was passed, the state passed anti-vagrancy laws. And what that did was it made it a dangerous thing for one who was formerly a slave to actually leave the plantation, because if they left the plantation and they didn't have identification and they didn't have a certain amount of money in their pockets, they could be arrested for vagrancy. And if they were arrested for vagrancy, they would then be put on a chain gang who would be sold back to the plantation owner that they just left at cost. So they would then sell that labor back to the plantation owner at cost. And what this did was it began to erode the solvency of those people at that time. So the slave owner, his home, everything that he had to be sold in order to pay for this labor that was doing this work for him to be able to survive. And so what they did was they began to speak to the former slave and say, look, you're free, right? You can leave. But if you leave, who's going to give you a job? Who's going to rent you a home? Who's going to provide you tools? Who's going to provide you clothes? Who's going to provide your water? Who's going to birth your babies? Who's going to take care of those things that I have been taking care of for you for the last 200 years? And it made really good sense. It was not bad questions, right? Who's going to do that? Some of the people said, damn that, I don't care. I'm going to do it myself. Or we'll starve, right? We'll die before we stay here on this plantation. But many of them didn't choose to leave because, again, it just made good sense, right? Who's going to hire you? How are you going to survive? How are you going to take care of your family, right? So many of them didn't leave. They prepared a contract between the former enslaved and the former slave master that said, okay, you're going to work here. We're going to provide these things. We're going to continue to provide the essentials that we had been providing, but we're going to provide them at cost. Okay, we're going to provide them at cost. And you're going to continue to do the work that you're used to doing. We're not going to whip you no more. We're not going to beat you no more, right? You're going to continue to do that, and you're going to earn a wage for the work that you've been doing, okay? And to many of the former enslaved, this made sense, right? It was a change from what they had been used to. At this point now, they could earn a wage for the work that they had been doing, whereas prior they did not. Okay, so what happened was the stores where seed would be purchased, grain would be purchased, tools, clothing, healthcare, essential needs, the water, the food, all of the things that had previously been provided by way of the slave master without cost, now had a cost and a price tag associated with them. And so when America's bottom fell out based on the agriculture and the tobacco and competing in international spaces, when that bottom fell out, she had to find a new way of generating capital. She had to find a new way in order to advance forward. And that new way was very similar to the old way, because what they were going to do was victimize the very people that produced their solvency. So they set up the company store right next to where those formerly enslaved people were living. So the tools that they needed to use, they would purchase at cost. And guess what they gave them? They gave them credit. They gave them credit. The seed that was needed, they gave them credit. The clothing, the health care, the essential needs were provided to the formerly enslaved people on credit. And so these people were not ignorant, right? And they were tallying. They were doing these harvests. They were doing these crops. They were doing this work. And they were tallying how much they were earning. And they got to a point, they had a plan, right? They got to a point where, from their perspective, they had worked and earned enough to be able to strike out on their own and take care of their own families. So they turned to the slave master and they said, okay, we've been here now for the last 3 years doing this work, providing these harvests. These are the amount of pounds of different crops that we have been creating over that past 3 years. I'm here for my payment. And so the slave master would then go to his ledger and say, okay, you're supposed to be paid this much per month or whatever it was. But for that month, your housing that you didn't have to pay for, I paid for. And that costs X amount. Your food that you didn't have to pay for, I paid for. And that cost X amount. Didn't your wife just have a baby? Yeah, that healthcare costs money. And so I paid that money for the healthcare. The tools that you used in order to be able to produce those harvests, those cost money, and I paid that cost. The seed that you used in order to produce those harvests, you didn't pay for that. I did, right? Everything that you got and everything that you used, you purchased at my company store, and you owe me for that. And so when that former enslaved man decided it was time for him to leave that enslaved capacity based on their honest work and the amount that was agreed upon that they would be paid, what happened was all of these deductions happened based on the essential need and owing their souls to the company store, right? So when they got up the gumption and they had the plan to leave, they turned to that former slave master and said, okay, give me what you owe me legitimately. And the slave master said, well, legitimately, I don't owe you anything. In fact, you owe me, right? You owe me. So I opened up speaking about the consumer versus the producer, right? And so to begin with, in American history, we were the producer. We produced it was through our wombs that workforces were produced. It was through our labor that the economy was produced. It was through our efforts and ingenuity that international markets could be accessed by way of the American farms and products. We produced all of the solvency that she enjoyed. Okay? Now, you flash forward, and I'm asking you to look at every single piece of media and every single thing that you see. Look at every billboard, look at every bus, look at every advertisement, look at every single thing that you see. And what you find is we have been turned into the consummate consumers. Again, they built their company store and they sold us everything that we needed, where you were formerly being taken care of, right? Your family was formerly being taken care of, their food, their clothing, their shelter, their health care, their seed, their clothes. All of these things were taken care of at one point. And once the Emancipation Proclamation happened, they were no longer being taken care of, and you owed for those services and those goods and those needs that you had. You owed every single day. And so now you flash forward to 2023, and the only thing that you see is things being sold to you, whether that be medicine, services, whether it be clothing, whether it be ideologies, whether it be belief systems. Every single piece of stimulus that you see today, some of your children have never known a different world than things being sold to them. So we feel like we can't be whole. We're not really men. We're not really women unless we're able to afford these things that are being sold to us. And so, again, we have been turned into the consummate consumer, where at one point we were the primary producer, right? And so today, listen to our most progressive. Look at the content that you're watching. Listen to what everybody is saying to you. They now are selling something. Why? Why is everybody you know selling something? And they'll tell you this is the way to achieve the American dream. I got to sell something. What else am I going to do, right? Everybody got to sell something. I got to create a brand. I got to do this, right? And so what it actually is, it's a continuation of the victimization that was put on you, because the Indian man is in your neighborhood selling his food. The Arab is in your neighborhood selling his gas. The Chinese man is in your neighborhood, and everybody set up shop next to the slave quarters to sell and extract from them every single thing that they had, right? Every single thing that they had would be purchased from someone else. And so when we adopt this thinking, sell out. All I want to do is reach a wider audience and sell my whatever it is, soap, right? Sell my whatever it is. What we're doing is we are continuing in the tradition of the colonizer who set up stores in our environments in order to extract any benefit or anything that we might gain. So what it necessarily means is no possible way that we as a group of people grow from this place by adopting the same logic and methodology that has us stuck in the place of consumerism. The only thing that you will gain is temporary comfort. But as a people and as a whole, there's no possible way that we can move from our condition emulating the colonizer who has sucked our blood. Do you understand? And so I wanted to quickly just talk through this, right? And explain how this has happened and how today in 2023, the only thing that you see as it relates to stimulus is selling you. It's to sell you everything. Look at every commercial. Look at everything that you see. All the media, look at the bus barns, look at on every billboard, look at your job, look everywhere throughout this society. It is looking to sell you something. It is set up shop next to the former slave's home so that they can sell their soul for temporary comfort. And this is how America has worked. And so the conversation was consumerism versus producer. And as long as we are the avid consumer that the Jew can take advantage of, that the Chinese can take advantage of, that the Korean can take advantage of, that the Arab can take advantage of, that the Russian can take advantage of, that every single people, the Hispanic, can take advantage of, every single people that come to America get to enjoy and use the American dream. And the American dream is you, an avid consumer that has absolutely no other option but to purchase every single thing they need from another people. And you promote every other people through this process. The Hungarians came in and they occupied the slums, but they didn't stay there very long because they began selling things to you and you financed their social mobility. The Italians came into America through Ellis Island and they occupied the slums, but they didn't stay there very long because they began selling things to you and now you grew up on Sal's Pizza. The Koreans came in and they occupied the slums. The Chinese built the railroad and occupied the slums, but they didn't stay there very long because they exploited you just like the colonizer did, just like the blueprint described. And each and every single group that has ever come into America used this very same template, right? This very same template, a transgenerationally fixed asset that had absolutely no option but to buy everything that they needed to survive from another man. And they sold you over and over and over and over and over again. To the Polish, to the Hungarian, to the German, to the Eastern European, to the Yugoslavian, right? To the Amish, to the Armenians, right? To all of these different groups seeking a difference in their reality. Each of them came in and each of them used you as the vehicle to produce their social mobility. And each of them stepped off. They got their houses. They got their communities. They don't live near you no more. You live in that same shanty and you dancing around talking about this is wonderful. We free, right? But you're not free. They're free and they're eating off of your back. They're eating off of your womb. They are opportunists and they are eating from absolutely every form of misunderstanding and lack of clarity that you demonstrate every single day. And it's because very few of your leaders can speak these truths. Nobody speaks this. Nobody tells you the truth. Nobody walks through history and lets you know exactly how you got put into this game and exactly how America was built and how consumerism versus producerism is the real enemy here. I didn't want to spend too much time. I did want to clearly highlight how this happened and how you are in fact the American dream. Okay? Which means you can never attain it because you are it, right? So I just wanted to quickly do this. I didn't want to spend a lot of time. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully it's something that you understand and can digest. Look at it again. Ask me any questions as it relates to it. This is all historically documented fact, right? This is how it happened. Understand it and let's begin to move into a different direction, okay? Peace.